Almost 9,000 of you voted in our survey to rank the Elden Ring bosses. Questions asked respondents to rank up to 10 of their easiest and hardest bosses. I created a weighted score by subtracting the representation of hardest to easiest, then dividing by the average response. Math. Without further ado, here's your ranking of the Elden Ring boss difficulty. Our first tier is the significantly easy bosses that scored from -100 to -51. Of these, the runaway winner of the Cupcake Trophy is Mimic Tier. Easiest, Mimic Tier. No explanation needed. Pack it in then, we're done. The reality is Mimic Tier is you, but worse in all regards. It's a joke, but at least it tries. Even streaking, it puts up a sad effort to fist you to no avail. Yes, my suggested striptease method of equipping, then re-equipping all items, leaves Mimic Tier a bare-handed nudist. Even if you leave its dignity intact, it's a brain-dead AI brawl with you conducting the tempo. The real question is, how did it get 59 votes for a hardest nod? Mimic Tier is without a doubt the hardest. They go straight nuts, and honestly, I don't know how I beat it. I assumed it was simple misclicks. Yet it seems like there's a Dark Horse faction of Mimic Tier worshippers underneath the Soldier of Godrick hype. Mimic Tier is the hardest boss, and easiest, and best, and worst. Now we can really pack it in. Fia's Gang Squad fell 11 points to runner-up the rear. The bane of my existence in speedruns due to the unpredictable skull spam is hilariously easy in standard context. In fact, no one even bothered to talk about how easy they are, but there's plenty sounding off on how much they suck. In fact, the only mention of their difficulty was being the hardest boss in the game. From expects me to fight this thick boy while some chump waterfowls me and a third bozo spams Rotten Breath from afar. Credit where it's due for making my dreams come true though. Getting ganked by Smough, Malenia, and Decaying— how the fuck do you pronounce it? Exyx? And Decaying Exyx is a fight for the ages. 0 out of 10, best boss ever. Poetry courtesy of name. Regal Ancestor Spirit teleported in shortly after with the least votes for hardest of any boss with a mere 16 votes. In contrast to Fia's champions, Regal Ancestor Spirit has an underrated outpour of love in the comments. Harrison summed up the difficulty experience well. Regal Ancestor Spirit suffers due to its simplicity. However, the run-up, atmosphere, arena, and soundtrack made it one of the more memorable moments. Next up is Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. Best boss 10 out of 10. God tier monologue. Definitely didn't die before he finished without being able to cast a spell. Gideon is relegated to a glorified NPC battle with mostly moves you've seen before. The callback may be neat, but the familiarity leads to a glorified ego boost, which may feel good coming off the heels of Destined Death. Our final cupcake is Leonine Misbegotten, slight challenge that is overridden by stunlocking it into oblivion, and dealing adequate damage even if you're on a fresh save. I'm honestly surprised it doesn't just keel over and die. Harsh, but true. Leonine's only as threatening as his backup. His aggression can throw you for a loop in multi-aggro scenarios. Alone, he's almost guaranteed to lose. You know what's the only thing worse than the losses suffered by our bottom 5? Hair loss. Dodge roll out of male pattern baldness with today's sponsor, Keeps. A sad fact of follicle life is 2 out of 3 men experience hair loss by age 35. Speaking as an unfortunate soul with a 5 head that started losing his locks by the time I got a driver's license, hair loss is near and dear to my scalp. I resigned myself to cue baldom in my 20s and shaved my head. Guess how that went? I look like a frickin' egg, dude. Can I offer you a head of hair in these trying times? Keeps offers clinically proven research-backed treatments to maintain your luscious locks. Via an online subscription, prescribing doctors customize a plan according to your needs, then ship treatment to your door at a fraction of the pharmacy price. Keeps network of medical maestros are on speed dial with a free year of unlimited messaging to support you. When it comes to hair loss, maintenance is the name of the game. Even if you're the opposite of an egg, it's crucial to act while you still have your hair to keep it thriving. For 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/democracy. That's KEEPS.com/democracy. Big thanks to Keeps for sponsoring today's video, and thank you for listening. Our second tier hosts the notably easy bosses that scored -50 to -26. Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon, kicks it off. The first half is just running around easily slaying minions so you can wail on her risk-free. Aside from Comet Azure, Phase 2 is a cakewalk with passive AI plus easy to evade summons and spells. She barely beat out Flying Dragon Agil, whose biggest achievement was the third least votes for hardest behind Fia's champions and Ancestor Spirit. Agil is a pushover that deserves a super low spot. If there's one thing Elden Ring had more of than bloodstains in Malenia's arena, it was dragons. They took what I wager was meant to be an early game test and rehash slightly tweaked variants all over the lands between. If my life was on the line and I had to defeat a single boss to live, I'm picking Agheel easy. This plague of dragons continues with Magma Wyrm, a boring boss repeated far too many times. Unlike Agheel, they didn't change anything about it, aside from letting some of them stand up. At least some sort of elemental breath would have been nice. It's not like we don't have an example readily available. Square up, wait for an attack, booty smack. As long as you respect the lava charge in close quarters, you're golden. A wolf from a similarly incandescent order, Red Wolf of Radagon is just a big dog enemy. It's that same annoyance blown up to boss stature. Red Wolf has that signature quickness to dart in and out of your range. Its delayed magic layers on pressure in tricky ways when it leaps and yanks the camera. Yet it's easy for being a glass cannon when quickly outweighed by even mid-game stats. The Bottom Dweller finale is brought to you by Dragonkin Soldier, a boss so forgettable despite its 3 appearances there are barely any comments to draw from. Only why it's either a basic bitch unworthy of being a boss, or a thoughtful take on why the Noxtella variant is the greatest. Best thing about this comment, Dragonkin Soldier is doing his best, and it makes Lichdragon Fortisaxx look like the cardboard box of a fight he really is. Take that, you beige bitch! Believe it or not, that's a perfect segue into our next category. Moderate difficulty, also known as the meh, the blah, the forgettable bunch in the middle that don't polarize you one way or the other. The middle of the road is defined by scores -25 to 25. We're gonna play a game of rapid fire, where I define the difficulty of each using choice words from multiple comments. Godfrey, first Elden Lord. Godfrey isn't strictly very hard, but 'twas nobly fought. Godrick the Grafted. Godrick is a formidable duel with a strong opponent. Then he cuts his arm off and fists a dragon. What the actual fuck? A perfect challenge for this part of the game. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. It may not be the most difficult boss, but the sheer spectacle gave me goosebumps. Godskin Apostle. I actually really enjoy how Noodle Boy stretches out. Challenging, but not overly so. Loretta, Knight of the Haligtree. She's a very balanced appetizer while not being oppressive. Astel, natural born of the void. I think it's a shame he's a galactic testicle worm. The single greatest Eldritch abomination was just pure smoke and mirrors. Godskin Noble. Fat guy with incredible speed made me die. Elemer of the Briar. The flying sword kicks my ass half the time. Lichdragon Fortisaxx. I beat him in 45 seconds like the cardboard box of a fight he really is. Crucible Knight and Misbegotten Warrior. They don't really fit together. Specifically, it hasn't been modified enough to make up for you having to fight both at once. Margit the Fell Omen. An excellent gatekeeper of the game's mechanics is a good early game challenge. And finally, Fire Giant. I can't see shit! Feet worshipping moments can blow me. So much damage for such a large health bar. Now we're getting somewhere. Our next tier showcases the notably difficult challenges that scored from 26 to 50. Morgott the Fell King barely squeaked past the middle of the road. He's not very hard, but he's perfect in terms of design. His build is great, with a souped up Margit moveset. He's not hitting you with anything you've never seen. You know these attacks, it's just a matter of, are you good enough to beat this fight? Due to Elden Ring's open world design, your experience may vary. He lacks health, making him the easiest demigod for a lot of first playthroughs. With thorough exploration, breezing through the capital overpowered isn't unexpected. It was an odd choice to balance the capital for mid-game stats, then dial scaling to 11 in the mountaintops. It makes the difficulty for Morgott highly dependent on when you fight him. It's hard to say the same for Valiant Gargoyles. The duo's unpredictable aggression can make even endgame builds falter. They took an already hard-hitting, fast, tough-to-track enemy and decided 2 would be good. There is no cover in the arena, and the Gargoyles' massive AoEs make attacking a nightmare when close together. Remember how Demon Princes had a ground trail as a tell so you could focus one demon with an idea of what the other was doing? That was awesome. Why doesn't this fight have that? Just a frustrating experience. Not unlike Commander Nile, yet another ham-fisted gank. Most of the challenge didn't come from Nile himself, but the dual-wielding warrior. His flurry tore through my health before I could even put a dent in Nile's. Even when I got past his summons, Nile's phase 2 attacks had unfairly high range and speed for the small arena. Even with Nile being passive, dealing with his knights can be painful. Once you make it past, it's give and take. Nile's lightning stomp can be baited by running away, dodging gives a hearty opening. On the flip side, his elemental bursts are insanely large with a minimal tell. Since they layer frostbite, the added damage can brutalize the girthiest of health bars. Bodacious HP like our final notable challenge, Dragonlord Placidusax. His claw, lightning, and breath attacks have reasonable tells, and they grant perfect counter opportunities. He's very good at punishing greed, such as when he roasts you for hacking at his sides. It keeps the fight engaging, demanding constant attention. His teleports were very manageable due to lock-on tracking. Finally, his laser attack, while incredibly dangerous, is telegraphed from a mile away with fair evasion opportunities. This is what I and many other commenters love about Placidusax. Within an incredible spectacle fight, there's a carefully balanced moveset that creates a satisfying battle to overcome. That's no easy feat, but its difficulty pales in comparison to the final 7 remaining. With scores of 51 or greater, Starscourge Radahn leaps forward as the first significantly difficult battle in Elden Ring with nearly 1,200 more votes than Placidusax. He's mechanically great, having a nice blend of horseback and on-foot engagements. His tricky, widespread attacks still felt fair to deal with, and grow more exciting as he adds gravity magic to it all in awesome spectacles. He may be the lowest entrant, but Radahn is the only mid-game boss that made it this high on the list. This was apparent with the early outcry against Radahn on release, with him posing the first significant wall to progress. He was nerfed for it, though FromSoft fortunately reverted them partially. Where his difficulty can vary is how heavily you rely on horseback. If you decide to stay on torrent the whole time, it ends up being as easy as a jousting match with normal enemies once you close the gap. That said, fighting him on foot makes for an intense fight that no player can control the pace of. Even on horseback, as Mark noted, his tremendous range can cleave you before you reach him, so it's not completely trivialized. No matter how you face him, you'll need calculated execution to come out victorious. Hoarah Loux will hardly give you time to breathe, let alone make split-second decisions. He stood out to me for his incredible fairness. Every single attack has readable, well-paced telegraphs and has reliable evasion that's intuitive without hours of frame analysis. He doesn't do egregious damage and has good punish windows for adept counters. The second phase's insane aggression increases the challenge by a lot, but I appreciate the acceleration within his tight design all the more. You aren't alone. For context on the mid-game to end-game difficulty difference, Hoarah Loux had 5,000 more hardest votes than Godfrey's Shade, with 18 times less votes for the easiest. Considering a near-identical moveset makes up half of this fight, that's a significant increase. As CT mentioned, despite Hoarah Loux's aggression and bump in damage over the Shade, the exceptional pacing and intuitive design makes this challenging battle feel fair to overcome. In his own words, "'twas nobly fought." Then there's Mogh Lord of Dishonor. Nice. Actually, it's Mogh, not nice. Never nice for you. I love how the fight is all about positioning and carefully timing your rolls. His moveset is perfectly designed for you to use stance breaking mechanics. His attacks aren't obnoxiously delayed either. They catch reflexive rolling, but not to an egregious level. The blood flame attacks are enjoyable with reasonable damage, no stagger, and bleed buildup, which matches the whole aesthetic. It's punishing, not unlike his countdown of 3, 2, 1, nothing, 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 which is what your health bar is gonna look like fighting Mogh. The restraint in Mogh's moveset that led to his pristine balance and pacing is a big reason I rate him so highly. He's difficult, but not to a degree that ever feels unfair. The blood flame is certainly punishing if it builds, but there are ways to mitigate it. I especially appreciate the pressure it layers on, forcing you to be defensive while Mogh never lets off the gas. If balance is Mogh's MO, Godskin Duo is the exact opposite. Perhaps it's their chaotic evil design that helped them beat Mogh by a mere 38 votes. Godskin Duo made me more frustrated than I've ever been in gaming history. It was the only boss that didn't allow you the freedom to play as you wanted. Sure, put them to sleep or use spirit ashes, but I didn't want to compromise. Those jerks made me realize FromSoft sometimes hates fun. At its very core, gaming is entertainment. Even if you aren't having fun, you should be getting something out of the experience. The only thing you get here is imbalance, due to 2 highly aggressive enemies that are powerful at both close and long range. The arena does little to separate them. Their enormous health pool is made all the worse with the need to beat them several times. Most egregious to me is the inability to end the fight by killing both of them before their partner resummons them. Calculated damage pacing on the player's end should be rewarded in a fight like this. Instead, this fight is punishment from start to finish. In contrast, Radagon in Elden Beast kicks off with Golden Bliss, falling rapidly into the Celestial Abyss. Radagon is an amazing boss. His moveset is simple to grasp, but satisfying to dodge amidst beautiful particle effects. Other than blinding teleports on top of you, he would have been a great final boss, which makes Elden Beast taking that title just pathetic. It's hardly a fight because you spend 90% of it chasing the beast as it jumps from one side of the arena to another. Your stamina will be near empty by the time you get to it, unless it's flinging magic at you during that time, which results in no stamina. Radagon's simplicity has deceptively deep layers and minor variations on his hammer swings, magic shots, and cascading slams. His pursuit is intimidating, and he has access to a large suite of moves at all ranges. While he is difficult individually, he's fairly balanced to overcome and master. What elevates the difficulty greatly is his drain on your resources before the real final battle begins. While no individual move from Elden Beast is difficult to deal with in a vacuum, it's the combinations of them alongside inconsistent movement that elevates it. Especially now that the beast was altered to inconsistently do its signature attacks in patch 1.04. However, they did nerf Elden Stars to have dramatically decreased range, so it's not the threat that it used to be. Sometimes the beast spams melee again and again, making for an easy climax. Other times it plays aquatic bumper cars for minutes without letting you get so much as an attack in. Dealing with that uncertainty on the tail of Radagon is a tall order, which makes it all the more impressive that Maliketh the Black Blade ranks higher. In contrast to the Endurance finale, Maliketh is a glass cannon. What he lacks in HP, he makes up for in damage, agility, and range. His damage output is absolutely insane. It's capable of ravaging your health in an instant, but never felt unfair in comparison to others. The low HP is important, but even more key is how well you can weave between his attacks with good positioning to create openings. Relying solely on dodging at the right time isn't sufficient. Many of his attacks catch rolls with swift follow-ups or his own evasion. You need to use all of your movement options to take advantage of his many blind spots, proximity-based moves, and gaps in his attacks themselves. It seems impossible to play aggressive at first with his maneuverability, but it's just that it takes more thought and attention to identify his openings. I really appreciated this shift. It's been present in other fights in the past where you can strafe around bosses to create openings Roland cannot. The depth in your ability to execute is staggering. His difficulty assists in deepening this journey with contextual combo variations, delayed tells, insane range, and tremendous damage output. This all creates considerable difficulty until you've mastered it. The only boss more demanding? To the surprise of absolutely no one, the hardest boss by a staggering 16 points is Malenia Blade of Miquella. To put her domination of this survey in context, she had 1,000 more votes than the entire bottom 20 of the list combined. I love Malenia due to her engaging moveset and fair tells. The fact you can parry most of her attacks makes her very fun and fair to fight, is what I would like to say, but unfortunately Waterfowl Dance exists and damn is it annoying. It took me way too long to learn how not to instantly die. I honestly feel like no one would miss it if it got removed overnight. I still find it difficult to believe Radahn and Elden Beast got nerfed in a game where Waterfowl Dance exists untouched. Malenia suffers from a different corrupted rot I call difficulty oversaturation. She has way too much about her making her hard to the point of unfairness. She regains health on hit, something the player can't replicate or counter even with her own Great Rune, Scarlet Rot, Waterfowl Dance, that clone attack, a hyper-armored kick, the list goes on. Malenia would have been a great, fair, extremely difficult fight without these things. While I agree Malenia is overkill, I wouldn't say Rot is a big issue. It's only on a few very well telegraphed attacks. Sure, it's on Waterfowl, but that's a Waterfowl evasion issue, not a Rot issue. I've mentioned that I'm not a fan of the hyper-armored kick. Bruh. Stun locking her would be too easy without some hyper armor. I just feel like she should have limited use of these kind of get out of jail free cards. A cooldown on the kick would be nice. Waterfowl definitely needs some sort of balancing, and I can't disagree there aren't a large amount of players who would be happy to see it removed entirely. But if you get rid of everything unique about Malenia entirely, all you're left with is an elegant swordswoman. Not that I don't enjoy her more standard moveset, it's very well crafted. It's that I think her super moves do add something to her formula, as well as her lifesteal and rot, even if it's arguable those are unfair ways to punish the player. I think most can agree Malenia needed more time on the drawing board to iron out her design. As the Grape Thief states, she feels like she was designed well, and at the last minute they slapped on as much powerful stuff as they could. Whether or not they did this with full regard for balance is up for debate. What do you think about today's ranking? Hopefully I was able to communicate your voice as well. Apologies if this seemed brief for 33 bosses. Most comments related to quality, so expect a deeper dive for that ranking. Until then, I want to thank you for watching today. Much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.